Hello, this is OverlordBou, and today I'll be covering the second of this patch's premium battle pass ship reward, the Tier 7 Lugdunum. Now, like the Tengshe, the Lugdunum is a tie-in to the ongoing Event Pass story that follows two explorers as they explore the Arctic. Now, this ship is legit a secondary Lyon, and I'm going to be going over what makes this ship great and what makes it not so great. So what makes this ship great? Well, you have very strong secondaries that have the same improved secondary dispersion of the German battle cruisers, which we all know are extremely strong. And you get 24 130 millimeter guns, 12 per side, with 22 millimeter of pen, and they have a range of 9.5 kilometers, and they reload faster than Lyons. So the secondaries on this thing are really good. But the thing is, even though they're really good at tier 7, if you do get up tiered, it's going to be quite a problem due to the fact that up tier ships will have longer secondaries. But that doesn't matter, because even if you can't play as a secondary ship, you are able to use the 4 quad 340 millimeter guns that have a fast 25-second reload. They have a standard dispersion, a 17.4 kilometer range. You can use those as very strong HE thrower at long distance, because again, the AP isn't going to be that great on the 340 millimeter shells. So they're good at catching broadsides for cruisers and battleships near like middle to long range, maybe around 8 through 12 kilometers ish. But for longer distance, you're going to want to use that HE just to get those good fires. Now, the hull of this ship is exactly the same as the Tier 7 Lyon, and I'll go over that in detail. So you have a 53,400 HP pool, which is on par with normal Tier 7 battleships. You have a 26 millimeter bow/stern with a 30 millimeter deck, with a 180 millimeter side armor, and with a 120 millimeter/180 millimeter icebreaker armor. You do have a standard DCP and a fast reloading repair party, which makes this thing a lot tankier than the Lyon, since you do get a faster heal. Now, you do get 16% torpedo reduction, which isn't the best, but it's all right. It's not the worst, not the best. It's about average. So this ship is pretty well armored for a tier 7 battleship, but it definitely suffers if the enemy can punch through that 30 millimeter deck with HE. So like tier 8s or tier 9s, if you get into the higher tier matchmaking and stuff, it can be really painful for that. But against AP, it is going to shrug off a lot of the battleship AP when angled, due to how thick the armor is all over the ship. So that's definitely a huge plus side for this ship. Moving on from that, let's talk about the anti-air. No. It is better than most battleships, but due to the fact you're going to be seeing tier 8 CVs, you're just going to be bending over. You're going to be bending over and just taking it from them, unfortunately. It's going to be very, very painful. For maneuverability, you do get a top speed of 27 knots, which isn't the quickest, but you can put the speed flag, which pushes you up to about 29 knots. You do have a very tight turning radius of 700 meters. That's on par with a lot of destroyers. And you have a 14.1 second rudder shift time. It is an extremely tight turning radius for a battleship, even tighter than many cruisers and destroyers. But it is a slow ship, and the rudder shift does offset it. So overall, it's nothing super impressive besides the fast turning of the really tight turning radius. For the concealment, it is 1 kilometer stealthier than Lyon, and this helps you a lot when closing in the distance for brawling ranges, or if you have to go dark, it does make it easier for you to be able to go dark if you need it. So the detection on this thing is 12.7 kilometers surface with an aerial of 7.6 kilometers, which the 7.6 kilometer aerial is actually really good for a battleship. Normally with that kind of range, you get around 10 kilometers, so it does make your ship more stealthy against aircraft carriers. For the consumables, you have a standard DCP with a fast reloading heal. This is very useful if you're doing a lot of close range brawling. You're constantly under fire. You can get that heal going over and over and over again. Really nice in that regard of keeping you alive. So that fast heal is the difference between keeping you alive or not in a lot of these brawls, and being able to have that fast acting heal is going to be very impressive for this ship. I like it a lot. It turns this ship from just a Lyon into an actual brawler Lyon, which some people may want and some people may not want. But the great option about this ship is you have so many guns that you can just spam HE at long distance, as you'll be seeing in this replay, where if I'm not able to push in, I can just HE farm all of their battleships or cruisers, just stay at distance and not risk dying early by pushing into aggressive. You gotta know that balance on when to push and when not to push, because you push in too early, you're just gonna get yourself absolutely destroyed. You push in too late, or if you push in like later when there's less ships, you're going to be able to use those secondaries to your full advantage. So talking about this ship, do I think it's worth the battle pass? Yes. At first I wasn't, because NA matchmaking puts you a lot into tier 9 matchmaking, which is really suffering. But the thing is, I kept trying to play the ship like a secondary ship when you're up tier to tier 9, right? Which you can't do. If you're up tier to tier 8 or tier 9, you can't play this thing like a brawler. You gotta play it like a long-range HE thrower, which you are perfectly able to do with this ship with how many guns you have on this thing. Having 16 guns, you're more than likely going to get some fire at some point by hitting something. You're gonna get a fire sooner or later. And I'll be showing the build at the end of the video. I do not recommend IFHE on this ship. Now, if you're playing ranked, I would recommend IFHE for that extra pin for your secondaries. But if you're playing randoms or whatever else, I don't recommend you taking IFHE, because it takes away from your fire chance, which you really need if you're being up tiered in tier 8 and tier 9. Really need that extra fire chance for those big guns and for your secondaries, because that does a lot of damage to those higher tier ships. So we talked about the hull. We did a quick talk about the guns. The Sigma is definitely not the best for the guns, which is why I recommend more HE rather than AP when you're firing the guns. The secondaries, talked about how great the secondaries are. Anti-air, it's whatever. Not the best. ASW, same as the standard tier 7 battleship, so nothing special about there. We talked about the maneuverability. We talked about the great concealment. We talked about the fast heal and the standard DCP. So let's talk about this ship overall. Overall, this ship is the secondary version of the Lyon. She still sports her fearsome 16 340mm broadside guns, but adds powerful secondaries to punish enemies who angle to her guns. She is a monster once she gets into those 9.5 kilometer range, and enemies will either get farmed to death by her secondaries or get blasted by the AP when they turn broadside. The problem is closing into range, which would be almost impossible or extremely difficult when up tiered in tier 8, tier 9. And her guns aren't bad. They aren't bad, but will struggle if anyone is angled to you. Which is why when you're up tiered in tier 8 or tier 9, you switch from being a brawler more into a long range HE thrower, and you'll do amazingly well in those higher tiers. Now, if you're gonna play her like any other secondary ship, you observe the battlefield, pick off broadside ships, and rush in with your secondaries when the time is right. She performs better in ranked, where it's easier to get into secondary range and when there's less ships that are able to target you, especially as everyone is still spamming the Scharnhorst 43. As long as you stay outside of that ship's torpedo range, you'll be able to eat Scharnhorst 43s and regular Scharnhorsts alive, which is really impressive with how strong the Scharnhorst is. This thing is able to compete with it, which is very impressive. Now, like I was saying earlier, you're going to want to use HE a lot of the time in this ship and use AP on broadside or more angle targets, where if they're showing more side, then yeah, you can use AP. But if they're sitting bow into you or aft, or they're running away or going in, just spam HE. That's why I'd be recommending the gun feeder, so you're able to get quicker switches between the shells. So if someone's turning broads, you can quickly switch to AP, or if someone's just going to stay bound, you can quickly switch back to HE. Is how I would recommend it for sure. But yeah, overall, at first, I wasn't going to recommend this ship. You do have to rebuy the Battle Pass for the second stage. It should be for 3,500 doubloons, just like the previous one for the Tang Shay. So, do I think it's worth it? Yes. There's going to be a lot of rewards, just like in the Tang Shay. So, I think this ship overall is going to be worth the second phase of the dockyard. And the thing is, even if you don't want the ship, you can get all those rewards just like in the first battle pass. You can get the same, they're going to be same ones in the second one. So I definitely recommend the buying the battle pass just for those rewards, because if you're playing the game, you're going to get it anyway. So I'd recommend it in that regard, because this is going to be a very long patch. It's going to be going up until the middle of January. So you have a long time to be able to get this ship if you do decide to buy the battle pass, the second stage one. It's going to be a very, very long one for sure. So I'll definitely recommend this ship for the 3,500 doubloons. Now, this ship, other than what I was saying, it's also a nice crew trainer for the Pan-European. There aren't too many lower tier Pan-European ships. They did just add the Kalmar for destroyers for the dockyard. So if you're doing the dockyard and you get that ship, so that's great. The Kalmar I actually recommend. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good torpedo boat. Long range guns aren't the best, but the torpedoes are really decent for the tier. So I'd also recommend the Kalmar as well from the dockyard. Overall though, I think this ship is really nice. It's a nice addition to the game. If you want to play a secondary of Lyon, then great. If you don't want to play a secondary of Lyon, then just play the regular Lyon. You don't need to get this ship, is how I would put it. Because the thing is, if you're in Tier 8 or Tier 9, you're going to be playing this ship long distance anyway. So you might as well just play the Lyon at that point, right? But some people want to get a crew trainer for the the Pan-Europeans. They want to get a crew trainer, or maybe they just want to earn more credits at lower tier, or have a different rank ship. This would definitely be a nice ship for you to get that little bit more diversity if you are looking for that, because this ship is very tight maneuvering with the tightening circle, so you are able to turn to angle really quick with this ship, which is really nice. And you'll be seeing that throughout the replay here. Well, it's at the end of the replay, so more at this point I'm just trying to dodge the CV strikes at this point. So also, I would love to hear you guys' comments on what you guys think of the Tang Shay if you did get that ship, and how likely you guys are to get this ship. So definitely leave out in the comments what you guys are, if you're going to be getting this ship, and if you got the Tang Shay, or if you're only getting one or the other. Just let me know. I'm trying to get like a rough head count here of how many people are doing either or. But overall, good ship, fun brawler. I think it's worth the 3,500 doubloons. And if you're not interested in the ship, the awards themselves are worth the 3,500 doubloons that are in the battle pass, as long as you have the time to actually grind it. If you aren't going to be able to grind it, then I wouldn't say it's really worth it. It's because, again, it's more of a time investment. Once you buy the battle pass, you have to put time into it, or you have to pay money to then buy the stages for the battle pass, which are about like 1,000, I think, per stage, which, you know, I think you have to buy like 6 or 7 of them to be able to get the ship, which is like almost 10,000. So I wouldn't really think it's worth it at that point. But if you're grinding down the battle pass and you're not spending money to buy stages, then I think it's definitely worth it 100%. And I know a lot of people are spending a lot of money on Santa containers. So if you already are spending a lot of money on Santa containers, then you don't need to buy extra stages for that, unless you're just trying to get the rewards and extra Santa festival certificates, or whatever they called. But anyway, at this point in the video, we're going to switch over to the build. So you guys can look at the build that I have recommended for this ship. All right, so let's take a look at the build that I'd be recommending. So this ship is a secondary ship. Of course, we'll be going with a secondary build. So for the equipment, I go with main armament. You can do the auxiliary armament if you would like, if you feel like your secondaries are getting knocked out too much. Second perk I'd be taking is damage control system, so you have reduced chance of being set on fire and flooding. Third, I would take the secondary battery. This increases your secondary range and makes your dispersion more accurate for the secondaries. And then propulsion is what I take for this ship, so you can accelerate, get your top speed quicker. For the signals, you have to take the Mike Yankee signals so that you're able to get the longer secondary range for your secondaries, so you can get them up to the 9.5, which is a must-have for this ship. This also makes your dispersion tighter for the secondaries, and it makes sure you have a slightly quicker secondary reload, so make sure you take this as well. Anything else is more personal preference on what you want to take for signals, so we're not going to worry about that. So moving on, let's talk about the commander build, the most important part. So for the commander build, first would be gun feeder, so you can switch between AP and HE on this ship. Since it is a Lyon, a lot of time you're going to be using HE, but if you do happen to see a broadside cruiser, you can definitely block with AP. Next is going to be gun feeder, because as you can tell, very slow turret diverse on this battleship, so make sure you take the grease the gears. Third perk, you can build into secondaries first if you like, but normally I always recommend building into the regular build and then the secondaries. But if you just want to go out and brawl, then of course you can take the long range secondary and then the manual first, and then take fire prevention, then the heal, then the adrenaline. But what I would recommend is taking these two first, then adrenaline rush, then fire prevention, then the emergency repair, then the manual, and then the long range secondaries. Because this ship can be played just like a Lyon. You can play at long range using the HE to farm out ships. You don't have to play as a secondary ship. So even if you're in a match and up tiered where you're not able to use your secondaries, at least you can use the HE at long distance build to get those nice fires and do a lot of damage with that. But that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys have any questions or concerns, definitely know in the comments down below. This is OverlordBou, and I'll talk to y'all later.